Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. Another post on here reminded me of something strange that happened a couple of years ago. One of those moments that still makes me pause whenever I think about it. I was driving out to meet my parents, nothing unusual, just a normal day. I'd spoken to them on the phone literally minutes earlier, so I knew exactly where they were and roughly how long it would take them to reach our meeting point. They'd only just set off from home, so I wasn't expecting to see them anywhere on my route for at least another 10 or 15 minutes. As I approached a roundabout, I spotted a car coming across from the right. It took me a second to register it, but the shape, the color, even the number plate, it all matched my parents' car perfectly. It wasn't just a vague resemblance either, it was unmistakably theirs. What really froze me was seeing, as clear as daylight, my mum in the passenger seat. The window was closest to me, and I saw her head, her hair, everything. She was sitting exactly how she usually does when my dad's driving, angled slightly toward the middle, chatting away. It shocked me because they absolutely should not have been there yet. According to the call we'd just had, they were nowhere near that part of town. I didn't question it too much in the moment. I just assumed maybe they'd left earlier than they thought, or maybe I'd misheard them. I actually turned down the same road they took, thinking it would be funny to show up behind them like, "Surprise! Look who caught up!" I even reached for my phone to ring them, but decided to wait and surprise them in person instead. But as I followed the road, something felt off. Their car was nowhere to be seen. They should have been 2 or 3 cars ahead of me at most, yet the road was completely clear. No turns they could have taken without me noticing. No traffic to lose them in. By the time I reached the meeting point and still didn't see them, the confusion really set in. I finally called them, and that's when they told me they had only just left their home 5 minutes earlier. They hadn't been anywhere near the roundabout. I've seen some weird things in my life, but that one genuinely tripped me out. It felt like I'd watched a glitch in reality happen right in front of me. Story 2. I genuinely thought I was going crazy. Then I stumbled onto this sub, read through a bunch of posts, and calmed myself down. Well, a little. What happened to me 3 nights ago was honestly the scariest and most confusing experience I've ever had in my life, and even now I still replay it in my head. It was about 10:30 p.m. I had just finished a late workout at the gym and was walking home. The gym is close to my place, so I usually just walk back. On the way, I noticed a stray cat hanging out near the sidewalk. I'd seen it a few times before, friendly, clearly used to people, and that night it looked especially hungry. It meowed at me and followed behind, and I figured why not? I'll feed it something when we get home. As I reached my house, I looked through the kitchen window and saw my brother sitting at the table, eating. Perfect timing, I thought. I was going to knock on the window and ask him to hand me some cat food, or at least some leftover meat. But since he was mid-meal, I didn't want to interrupt him. So instead, I opened the front door, let the cat into the hallway, and closed it gently so it wouldn't run out. The first thing that popped into my mind was the weightlifting belt I had borrowed from my brother earlier that day. I figured I'd drop it off quickly before dealing with the cat. I walked down the hall, opened his bedroom door, and tossed the belt onto the floor, thinking the room was empty. Except it wasn't. My brother jerked awake, startled, clearly having been in a deep sleep. I flicked on the light, completely thrown off. "Did you seriously go from eating in the kitchen to asleep in like 30 seconds? I asked him, but it was obvious that wasn't possible. He could barely open his eyes. He hadn't been awake at all. He'd been asleep for a while. I apologized for waking him and left the room, but my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. I knew what I saw in the kitchen. I had seen my brother, same shirt he'd worn that day, same posture, same everything, sitting at the table eating. Crystal clear. Not a blur. Not a shadow. A real person. But when I walked back to the kitchen in full panic mode, it was empty. Completely empty. No brother. No plate. No food. Not even crumbs. The table looked untouched. My brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe it was my mom. She was in the room next to the kitchen with the door open, watching her show. I asked her if she had been in the kitchen a few minutes earlier. She said no, she hadn't moved from her room for the past hour, and she didn't hear anything coming from the kitchen at all, just the sound of me entering the house. That was the moment the fear fully hit me. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I barely slept that night, lights on, mind racing. And in case you're wondering, yes, I still fed the stray cat. Priorities. The next day I told my brother everything. He laughed it off, but I know what I saw. I am 100% sure. Story 3. 2.5 weeks ago, my dog passed away unexpectedly, and I've been taking it much harder than I ever imagined I would. He was part of my daily routine for years, always underfoot, always following me around, always listening for the smallest noise in the house. The silence he left behind feels heavier than anything I've ever experienced. About a week ago, I found myself alone in the house for the first time since he passed. That almost never happens. Between my wife, our 4 kids, and my work schedule, the house is usually bursting with noise and movement. But that night, it was just me. For reasons I can't fully explain, I decided to go lie down in bed for a few minutes. Maybe I just needed to stop thinking for a moment. Maybe I was trying to avoid wandering around a house that suddenly felt too empty. I walked upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and lay down. My dog's bed used to sit right outside my door in the hallway, the exact endpoint where the stairs meet the landing. I heard him make the trip up those stairs thousands of times. I could identify the rhythm of his steps, the way each stair creaked under his weight, the familiar sound of his claws tapping softly against the wood floor when he reached the top. As I was lying there, the house completely silent, I heard it, small steps on the stairs. The unmistakable creaking pattern of someone, or something, coming up. At first I froze, because I knew I was alone. Then the footsteps reached the landing, and I heard the gentle clack of claws on wood. His claws. The sound stopped directly in front of my bedroom door, exactly where his bed used to be. My heart was pounding, but I still called out. Hello? Hello? Is someone there? No answer. Just silence. After a few seconds of gathering enough courage, I jumped out of bed, yanked open the door, and there was nothing. No one. I ran downstairs, checking every door, every lock. Everything was still locked tight from the inside. My wife keeps reassuring me that it's grief, that the mind can play cruel tricks when it's hurting. And maybe she's right, but I know what I heard. I've lived with that sound for years. Even writing this now, I'm getting chills all over again. Am I losing my mind? Or did he come back, just for a moment? Story 4. During the second year I lived in my house, we ended up with a full-on mouse problem. I'd hear scratching and rustling specifically in one cabinet next to the dishwasher, always the same spot. It got to the point where I could identify the sound instantly. One afternoon, after hearing the familiar scrabbling noise, I opened the cabinet door just in time to see a mouse jump into a gap between the side wall and the top of the cabinet. The opening was maybe 2 inches wide, big enough for a mouse, but definitely not something I would have overlooked before that moment. I figured that must have been their entry point and mentally added, cover the gap with duct tape, to my growing list of house chores. I set glue traps, and yes, I killed them quickly once they were caught, and over the course of the next 2 weeks I trapped 14 mice. 14. It was exhausting and disgusting, but eventually the noises stopped, and I chalked it up as problem solved. After that, life went back to normal, and honestly, the whole mouse saga became one of those mildly annoying stories you tell people when they ask how homeownership is going. Fast forward to the next year. I'm going about my business when I hear that same unmistakable sound of little feet in the same cabinet. Immediately, I remembered the gap I'd never taped over and thought, okay, this time I'm sealing it for good. I grabbed the duct tape, fully expecting to see the same opening where I'd watched that mouse vanish the year before. I opened the cabinet door. No gap. Not a smaller gap. Not a covered gap. Nothing. Just a regular, flush cabinet wall with no space at all between the top and the side. I stared at it for a good minute, confused, trying to angle my head and look from different directions, thinking maybe I misremembered exactly where it had been. But there was nothing, no indication the gap had ever existed. No repairs had been done. No renovations. Nothing in the kitchen had changed since the day I first moved in. And I know what I saw. A mouse jumped straight into a visible 2-inch gap as plain as day, and I even put tape the opening on my mental to-do list. It was the first thing I thought of when the noise came back. But now the spot where that hole should be looks like it never existed at all. Weird doesn't even begin to cover it. Story 5. I wear glasses for driving, or whenever I'm at the cinema or a show. I don't legally need them, but everything just looks a little clearer with them on, so I try to keep a pair handy. I own 2 cheap pairs, one black, one purple, and because I'm hopelessly disorganized, I'm usually only aware of the location of one pair at a time. The other always turns up eventually in some random bag, jacket pocket, or shoved behind something in the car. It's a running joke in my house at this point. On Tuesday, I went to a show with my sister-in-law, and while we were walking in, I told her about my missing black glasses, and how I'd been relying on my purple pair instead. I even joked that one day I'd find the black pair in some ridiculous place, like the freezer or under a seat. I had the purple glasses with me at the show, and when I wasn't using them, I kept them tucked in my pocket. At the end of the night, when we got back to my car, I took them out and slipped them into the center console, exactly where I always put them so I won't lose them again, and then promptly forget they're there. The next morning, I was doing the school run shuffle and grabbed a McDonald's breakfast for me and my son. I put my coffee in the cup holder between the front seats, the same one I always use. I also rummaged around the area for loose change because the drive-through card reader was acting up. At no point did I see any glasses. That cup holder was empty, except for the coffee cup. Fast forward to today. I go out to my car, open the door, look down, and there, sitting neatly in the cup holder, are my black glasses. Folded, perfectly placed, as if someone had gently set them there for me to find. Meanwhile, my purple pair was sitting exactly where I left them, in the center console. I just stared at the black pair for a good 5 seconds, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I know those glasses were not in the cup holder yesterday. They couldn't have been. I literally put my coffee there. I handled the cup. I looked into the holder multiple times. I even dug around it for coins. If my glasses were there, I absolutely would have noticed. They're not small or subtle. Feeling properly weirded out, I messaged my sister-in-law and asked if she happened to see my black glasses in the car on Tuesday. She said no, definitely not. I asked my husband if he'd been in my car or moved anything. He hadn't. He was as confused as I was. There is no way those glasses were in that cup holder until this morning. It makes no sense. They've just appeared. I'm totally flabbergasted. So strange. Story 6. On December 29th, 2022, I was 21 years old. I took the bus that day, and when I got home I put my wallet on the table. I know I had my wallet when I got home because I kept my house keys in it and I had to unlock the door. The next day my friend came over and I went to go get my wallet and it wasn't on the table anymore, but my keys were still where I left them the day before. I looked everywhere. I tore everything apart looking for it. I couldn't find it. I had to get new of everything. I even had my social security card in there. I know it was dumb and I now keep it in a binder with other important paperwork. So it took about a month to get new of everything. I bought the same wallet off of Amazon because it was pretty and it was my favorite. I didn't use the bus for about 11 months. In November 2023, I went to the bus station with my friend and the bus lady said, "I have something for you." She reaches beneath her, which I assume was a shelf, and hands me my pink wallet I lost 11 months prior. She said, "I've been waiting to give this to you, but I haven't seen you in a while." Everything was still in there except for the bus passes I previously had. My debit and credit card, my social security card, my ID, my cash, change, and a few gift cards. I was shocked because I remember bringing it home and setting it on my table, and somehow it ended up at the bus station. I don't have any explanation for this. It's been 2 years since I got my wallet back, and I'm still confused on how this happened. Story 7. So this happened last week, but I've been too busy to write about it until today. Basically, I had to get new license plates for my car last week, and went to the DMV to get the plates, but I used a family member's car that's in better condition for this since the DMV is an hour away, and I only use my car locally. When I got back, I parked his car, found the right screwdrivers, and walked over to my car to put the license plates on. I remember vividly that I had both plates in my hands and double-checked. When I got there, I put one license plate on the top of the car, and then bent down to screw the other onto the back of my car. Then, when I went back for the other license plate, it wasn't there. I checked everywhere. On the car, in the car, under the car. Same for my family member's car. On the porch, the toolbox, the tables, the yard, inside the house, which I hadn't even gone into prior to putting the license plate on. I know for sure nobody would have walked by and snatched it, because that would be pretty difficult given the setup of where my car was located. It's also not a city, but a rural area, so I would have immediately noticed anyone walking up. To this day, it has not shown up. I have no explanation except that for some reason I thought the front of my car had no license plate and told my family member this a few times very assuredly, meaning I manifested this since now my car really doesn't have a front license plate. LOL. So, yeah, honestly really inconvenient, since now I have to pay the fee again for new plates right after getting them only last week. Edit. I forgot to add, but I also checked to make sure I didn't screw both on the rear. I even fully unscrewed the rear one before reattaching it. Update. This license plate did end up showing up like the day after I posted this. I should have waited another day. It was in a bushway in front of my car, but I had already checked there and around the entire area multiple times. Maybe I missed it. I have no clue how it got there. It wasn't windy that day, and I am 100% sure I put it on top of my car. But anyway, I have both plates now. Story 8. I was at work last night, doing my usual routine, when I pulled out my jumbo chapstick, the one I always keep with me. It's this big, fat, white plastic tube with a bright orange label and colorful lettering, the kind of thing you could spot from across the room. I applied some, put the cap back on, and set it on my desk right next to me. I remember thinking I should probably put it back in my purse before I forgot, but of course I didn't. Customers came in right then, so I got up, helped them, and carried on like normal. When they left, I reached over to grab my chapstick so I could toss it into my purse. It was gone. Not misplaced in a pile of things gone. Not, maybe I pushed it to the side gone. Completely, utterly gone. At first I thought maybe I had knocked it off the desk without realizing. I checked the floor. Nothing. Then I checked every single one of my pockets, front, back, jacket, apron. Still nothing. I dumped out my purse like a madwoman, checked under the counter, the sales shelves near the register, even the tiny bathroom we have in the back. It wasn't anywhere. And the whole time I was doing this, I could still taste and feel the chapstick on my lips. That fresh, slightly sweet layer was still there, reminding me that yes, I had definitely used it only minutes earlier. I wasn't misremembering. I wasn't mixing up timelines. I had literally just had it in my hand. This chapstick isn't exactly discreet. It's practically neon. There is no logical universe in which something so big, bright, and obvious just vanishes. So then my brain started trying to come up with explanations. Maybe one of the customers accidentally grabbed it when they picked up their things. Maybe they thought it was merchandise. Or maybe, and this creeped me out a little, someone intentionally took it for some weird reason. I mean, who steals chapstick off someone's desk? It's not exactly a high-value item. I was mostly just bummed, though, because the chapstick actually had some sentimental value. It wasn't expensive, but it had been a gift, and I'd kept it with me for a while. Losing it felt strangely personal. I texted a friend during my break complaining about it, just venting because I was so irritated. Eventually I just accepted it was gone. Oh well, chalk it up to another weird work shift. I finished up my night, locked up, went home, and headed straight for my bedroom. I dropped my purse and jacket on the floor, turned on the light, and there, sitting on my bed like it had been waiting for me, was my chapstick. Perfectly placed. Not hidden. Not rolled off somewhere. Just sitting there. I stood frozen for a good 10 seconds. I had not been home earlier. No one else had been in my room. It was impossible. Yet there it was. Still gives me chills just thinking about it. Story 9. So this really messed me up. By my front door, there's a small side table. A simple little piece of furniture that's been there as long as I've lived in this house. On that table I keep my letter opener. Always. It's the one item whose place has never changed in 6 years. My system is strict. A place for everything, and everything in its place. I run my house that way because it means I never lose things, never misplace anything, never have to wonder where something might be. It's a system that has never failed me, until this. The other day I got home from work, mail scattered across the doormat like usual. I picked it up, walked inside, and without thinking turned toward the side table to grab the letter opener. It wasn't there. Not slightly moved. Not under a bill. Not pushed to the edge. Just gone. My immediate thought was the obvious one. It must have fallen. Maybe I slammed the door too hard on my way out that morning, or maybe the vibrations somehow knocked it off. Houses shift, doors rattle, things happen. So I crouched down and started looking. First the base of the table, then behind it, then under it, then around the shoes by the door. Nothing. I checked every corner of the entryway, feeling almost irritated that something so simple had managed to slip out of sight. But it wasn't anywhere. Still, I brushed it off. It had to be there somewhere. I probably just overlooked it in my rush. I went into the living room, made dinner, watched TV, finished up some emails. I completely forgot about the whole thing. It was such a small, mundane mystery that I assumed it would resolve itself later. When I finally went to bed, though, everything changed. There, in the middle of my neatly made bed, sitting right on top of the duvet, was the letter opener. Perfectly placed. Not tossed. Not buried. Not wedged between pillows. Placed. I live alone. I had absolutely no recollection of bringing it into the bedroom. And I'm not the type of person who would set something somewhere random and walk away without putting it back. That goes against everything about how I keep my home. Even stranger, the bed had been made that morning before I left for work. I leave before the mail arrives, so there's no scenario in which I would have had the letter opener before work and put it on the bed. And if I had somehow sleepwalked, and that's already unlikely, the bed would not still be neatly made. I certainly wouldn't have placed the opener so deliberately on top of the duvet. Story 10. I was just reminded of this super weird thing that happened when I was younger. Whenever I try to explain it, it always sounds like some kind of paranormal story, but I've always been creeped out by ghosts and spirits, and, strangely, this event didn't feel like a haunting at all. It felt different. Wrong, yes, but not in the way ghost stories usually are. So picture this. I'm out shopping with my mom in a fairly large department store. It wasn't some bustling, packed weekend afternoon, more like one of those quieter days where the aisles feel wider and the air feels still. My two siblings had come along, but wandered off to some other shop nearby, which was pretty normal for us. We weren't expected to stay glued together as long as we checked in occasionally. The area itself wasn't a particularly popular part of town, so while the store wasn't empty, it had that calm, soft background noise kind of atmosphere. No crowds, no chatter, just the low hum of air conditioning and the occasional beeping of a till. Me and my mom stepped onto the escalator to head up to the next floor. It was a reasonably high one, the kind where, halfway up, you're suspended right between floors with nothing but open air around you. We were the only ones on it. Nobody above us, nobody below us. Just the two of us rising slowly through the middle of the store. We'd gotten about halfway up when it happened. I heard someone whisper my name. Not a faint, imaginary brush of sound. Not something you could confuse with the store speakers or a distant conversation. It was right in my ear, as clear and intimate as if someone had leaned in close enough that I should have been able to feel their breath. I whipped my head around instantly, expecting my mum to be looking away or smiling or playing around. But instead, she was staring directly at me with this puzzled, slightly alarmed expression. That look stopped me in my tracks. She looked like someone who'd heard something, even if she wasn't sure what. I asked her, "Did you hear that?" But before she could even open her mouth to answer, it happened again. Another whisper, my name again, but this time it was louder. Still soft, still a whisper, but undeniably clearer. It sounded like it came from just behind me, as if someone was standing on the same step of the escalator. Except there was no one there. My mum's eyes widened a bit, and that confirmed everything. She had heard it, not just the sound, but my name. It wasn't my imagination, and it wasn't something only my brain picked up. Whatever whispered had produced an actual sound in the real world, loud enough and clear enough for both of us. At this point I started scanning everything, up, down, behind, the floors around us. I was trying to catch sight of one of my sisters crouching behind a railing, maybe leaning over from another floor, maybe playing some elaborate prank. But that explanation fell apart immediately. There was nobody, not a single person on the floor above us or below us at that moment. The escalator was completely empty except for us. The surrounding balconies were empty. The aisles near the top were empty. And a whisper doesn't travel like that anyway. You can't throw a whisper across floors and make it sound like it's right next to someone's ear. It was just me and my mum, completely alone. So who or what whispered my name? My mum ended up brushing it off as quickly as she could, telling me not to think about it, insisting it was probably nothing. She said it in a calm, dismissive way, but there was something in her voice that made it clear she didn't entirely believe her own explanation. She clearly didn't want me spiraling, so she shut down the conversation before I could ask anything else. But I couldn't shake it. Even now, I can still recall the exact tone of the whisper, the strange closeness of it, the impossible direction it came from. It didn't feel threatening, but it also didn't feel like anything I could categorize. It didn't feel paranormal in the classic sense, because why on earth would some ghost hang around in a random British department store whispering at children going up escalators? And even if it was a spirit, what did it want? Why me? Why then? I'd be willing to chalk the whole thing up to imagination, or mishearing, or auditory hallucination. But I can't. Not when my mum heard it too. Not when we both reacted in the exact same moment. The fact that two people heard the same whisper in the same voice, with no visible source, absolutely rules out the easy explanations. Story 11. I was just reminded of this super weird thing that happened when I was younger. Whenever I try to explain it, it always sounds like some kind of paranormal story, but I've always been creeped out by ghosts and spirits, and strangely, this event didn't feel like a haunting at all. It felt different. Wrong, yes, but not in the way ghost stories usually are. So picture this. I'm out shopping with my mom in a fairly large department store. It wasn't some bustling, packed weekend afternoon, more like one of those quieter days where the aisles feel wider and the air feels still. My two siblings had come along but wandered off to some other shop nearby, which was pretty normal for us. We weren't expected to stay glued together as long as we checked in occasionally. The area itself wasn't a particularly popular part of town, so while the store wasn't empty, it had that calm, soft background noise kind of atmosphere. No crowds, no chatter, just the low hum of air conditioning and the occasional beeping of a till. Me and my mum stepped onto the escalator to head up to the next floor. It was a reasonably high one, the kind where, halfway up, you're suspended right between floors with nothing but open air around you. We were the only ones on it. Nobody above us, nobody below us. Just the two of us rising slowly through the middle of the store. We'd gotten about halfway up when it happened. I heard someone whisper my name. Not a faint, imaginary brush of sound. Not something you could confuse with the store speakers or a distant conversation. It was right in my ear, as clear and intimate as if someone had leaned in close enough that I should have been able to feel their breath. I whipped my head around instantly, expecting my mum to be looking away or smiling or playing around. But instead, she was staring directly at me with this puzzled, slightly alarmed expression. That look stopped me in my tracks. She looked like someone who'd heard something, even if she wasn't sure what. I asked her, "Did you hear that?" But before she could even open her mouth to answer, it happened again. Another whisper, my name again, but this time it was louder. Still soft, still a whisper, but undeniably clearer. It sounded like it came from just behind me, as if someone was standing on the same step of the escalator. Except there was no one there. My mum's eyes widened a bit, and that confirmed everything. She had heard it, not just the sound, but my name. It wasn't my imagination, and it wasn't something only my brain picked up. Whatever whispered had produced an actual sound in the real world, loud enough and clear enough for both of us. At this point I started scanning everything, up, down, behind, the floors around us. I was trying to catch sight of one of my sisters crouching behind a railing, maybe leaning over from another floor, maybe playing some elaborate prank. But that explanation fell apart immediately. There was nobody, not a single person on the floor above us or below us at that moment. The escalator was completely empty except for us. The surrounding balconies were empty. The aisles near the top were empty. And a whisper doesn't travel like that anyway. You can't throw a whisper across floors and make it sound like it's right next to someone's ear. It was just me and my mum, completely alone. So who or what whispered my name? My mum ended up brushing it off as quickly as she could, telling me not to think about it, insisting it was probably nothing. She said it in a calm, dismissive way, but there was something in her voice that made it clear she didn't entirely believe her own explanation. She clearly didn't want me spiraling, so she shut down the conversation before I could ask anything else. But I couldn't shake it. Even now, I can still recall the exact tone of the whisper, the strange closeness of it, the impossible direction it came from. It didn't feel threatening, but it also didn't feel like anything I could categorize. It didn't feel paranormal, in the classic sense, because why on earth would some ghost hang around in a random British department store whispering at children going up escalators? And even if it was a spirit, what did it want? Why me? Why then? I'd be willing to chalk the whole thing up to imagination, or mishearing, or auditory hallucination, but I can't. Not when my mum heard it too. Not when we both reacted in the exact same moment. The fact that two people heard the same whisper in the same voice, with no visible source, absolutely rules out the easy explanations. This has honestly driven me nuts for years. I still don't have anything even resembling a logical explanation. So, any ideas?